Howdy! This is your online lecture on the modern theoretical perspectives that guide the way we ask questions and do research on thinking and behavior today. As we go through this material, please try to recognize the ways the historical perspectives we talked about before have informed the way we do the science today. As a hint, it will really help you understand the material we'll cover later in the course if you can understand how, from these theoretical perspectives, scientists are thinking about the questions and answers today. That, in turn, is going to help you be a better consumer of psychology in real life. Plus, you'll do better on the exams. Now, before I talk about the individual perspectives, first I want to give you a broad overview to situate your thinking. I told you before that the field is gradually moving toward a convergence of theories, because that explains more. Across pretty much the entire field, all psychology researchers and healthcare providers agree that both nature and nurture matter to human thinking and behavior. You've probably heard that phrase, nature and nurture, but what does it really mean? In short, nature is what you are born with: genes, DNA, pre-wired neural systems that control basic physical conditions and functions, and allow your brain to learn new things. Nurture, on the other hand, is everything else. And that's a lot of stuff. Everything you're not already born with. All your experiences, the way you're raised, your religious beliefs, the schools you go to, people you meet, your friends, your music, what you eat, all of that. What psychologists all agree on is that every psychological characteristic is influenced by both nature and nurture. Some characteristics are lots more one than the other, and some characteristics are impacted strongly by both. But they all respond to both nature and nurture to some degree. Your personality, for instance. Some aspects of personality come from your genes, and some aspects come from experience. We'll talk more about that later on in developmental. The bottom line is, scientists recognize that even though each of us may only study one particular aspect of the human condition, that aspect always has to fit inside the system because people are complicated and there are tons of different things that influence our thinking and behavior. As I talk to you about the 7 modern perspectives, I'll keep it fairly brief. These are described in your text so you can read about them there as well, but the main points I want to make to you in this lecture are: 1. These are the major theoretical perspectives that drive the research and findings you're going to be hearing about in the rest of this course. So 2. Understanding the main ideas of each of these perspectives is going to help you understand the different pieces of the human puzzle and how the science is working to put them all together. Finally, 3, I want you to always bear in mind that the human experience is complex, and understanding human thinking and behavior will ultimately require joining the findings from all of these different perspectives. We're not there yet, but maybe it will be your generation that figures out how it all fits together. Now, the psychodynamic perspective. This is the modern version of Freud's psychoanalytic theory. Modern psychodynamic theorists still rely on the idea of unconscious motivations, but they also now accept that there are other motivations beyond sex and aggression, including such things as altruism. That is, the motivation to do something that helps someone else, even when there's no tangible benefit to oneself. The new behaviorist perspective is also a revision of the early classic theory of behaviorism. In this case, modern behaviorists are still primarily interested in overt, observable behaviors, and many behaviorists still rely on animal models to carry out their research. But modern behaviorists also recognize that covert mental processes are an important factor in behavior. We'll learn more about this perspective, particularly in the learning chapter. The humanistic perspective essentially rests in the idea of positive psychology. Quite the opposite of Freud's ideas, the humanists believe that people are essentially good, and that we make conscious choices about our behavior. However, this perspective takes into account the context of our lives as affecting our choices, rather than being driven by unconscious needs. Maslow came up with the pyramid of needs, and the idea is that we make choices in life to meet those needs, starting from the bottom of the pyramid with our most basic physiological needs for survival, like food and shelter. and always striving toward the top of the pyramid, self-actualization, which we attain when all our other needs have been met. And now we're free to behave in altruistic ways that help other people climb their own pyramids. In this perspective, people are responsible for their own fates according to the choices they make. The biopsychological perspective concentrates on the ways our biology, genes, hormones, neural communication, give rise to our psychology. Basically, this is the idea that every psychological event is tied to and preceded by a biological event. The cognitive perspective focuses primarily on covert mental processes. Some of these are built in, like the Gestalt perceptions, and some have to do with the ways we learn how to use our built-in abilities to acquire language, to solve problems, remember things, and so forth. The sociocultural perspective is somewhat newer, and it reflects our increasing awareness of the importance of nurture's influence on thinking and behavior. Here's where you'll find lots of research on the ways that social experiences and cultural beliefs can change the way people think and behave. Finally, the evolutionary perspective focuses on characteristics of psychology that are shared by humans across social situations and cultures. This is a very big picture approach that's especially interested in explaining the overall landscape of our human experience as a species. As examples show, in all known societies, for example, people lie. The idea is that if this trait is so pervasive, it's strong enough to override differences in belief systems and social experiences, then it must be something critical to the survival of our species, something that's built into our DNA somehow. Why and how these sorts of traits evolved and operate in our lives today, that's the primary interest of the evolutionary perspective. Now, to wrap these ideas up, keep in mind that scientists are people. Smart people, but still people. And as such, they have belief systems and experiences that affect them. Very specifically, psychologists are trained for many years in the beliefs of the perspectives we've just discussed, one or the other of them. So sometimes you will definitely see research outcomes that differ when they're approached from different perspectives. Ideally, again, I remind you, what the science strives for are the answers that can accommodate all the influences being considered by all the different perspectives on the human condition. Therefore, it's your job as a critical thinker to consider all of the different sources of information, to practice healthy objectivity, and to think carefully about the world inside you and the world around you. Thanks and gig 'em.